What would it be like to be a strategy execution specialist? Not sure exactly what that's all about? Well, how about this? An organizational development specialist. Still a bit fuzzy? Don't worry, I'm just playing with you a little bit. To be honest, before I researched this career, I was a little bit unsure of what it was all about. But cut to the chase, this is basically management consulting. And speaking of which, I have this great guest lined up. Her name is Lisa Carlin, and she has worked for some of the top consulting firms in the world, including Accenture, McKinsey, and not only that, she's founded her own network of consultants that work around the world with organizations, with governments, with top enterprises. And she's here to speak about her profession, what it's all about. We're gonna get into the rewards, the challenges, you name it. But as always, I do have to say that these videos are a little bit on the short side. I do have the full-length audio versions, and you can check them out wherever you access your podcast. Just do that search for Life as a ... Okay, well, before we dive into things like strategy, execution, organizational development talk, maybe we should start at square one, which is consulting. I mean, what is consulting all about? So here's a clip of Lisa explaining that for us.
In consulting, you actually learn a rigorous way of breaking down a problem into components, into questions that you want to answer, and forming hypotheses and testing them out. So you get a really fast way to solve complex problems. And that there is nothing more exciting than doing that, than going into a workshop with clients in a room full of people or one-on-one, because I often do a lot of mentoring. And you start with a blank piece of paper, and the client's got all this sort of stuff in their head that they're just trying to figure out what the answer is. Like, what market do I go into? What goals should I have next year? How do I execute those goals? I want to take my organization and make it look from A to B. How do I get there? I want to change the culture. I want to improve the sales. How do I get there? And it's just fascinating. So from a work point of view, it's great. You've got to live with a lot of unpredictability and ambiguity. If you want to be to know exactly what you're doing and where you're going to be at a particular day, at a particular time, then this is not the profession for you. The variety is incredible. So when I was in my 20s, I remember sitting on corporate jets going to McKinsey clients out in the middle of nowhere to investigate, different things at different factories or wherever I was going. And you just don't know. You don't know where you're going to be. Yeah. So that's from a personal point of view, that variety is, I love that variety. Yeah. But that's not for everybody.
All right. Well, I hope that last clip gave you a good idea of what management consulting is all about, at least from a generalist perspective in terms of roles and responsibilities and also life impact. But I do want to take things a step further. And here's a clip of Lisa explaining who this type of work might appeal to. So check this out as well.
I always say to folks, if you don't know what to do as a career and you really enjoy problem solving and variety, this is a great one, because you can be, in one day, you can be working for a small non-for-profit, based locally. And in another day, you can be running a meeting with, hundreds of people in a marketing function out of the US and Europe.
Yeah. Talk about reward. Talk about certain challenges, but also a lot of reward in doing that. Like I said, it's a theme that comes up on this program quite a bit, is wearing several different hats and the actual fulfillment that people get from that. I mean, at first glance, it could be stressful, it can be, pressure packed, but really, I mean, at the end of the day, that's where a lot of the value is derived from. At least from the conversations that I've had.
Okay, well, now that we're all on the same page in terms of what management consulting is all about, I think it's about time that we slide into the nitty gritty, some OD or organizational development or strategy execution. And basically these practices, as mentioned before, are all about helping organizations, companies, or governments out in terms of solving some of their problems, improving their operations in some form. But in order to do all of that, there is a big understanding. There's a critical understanding that consultants need to have about the state of these organizations. And here's a clip of Lisa explaining that.
that culture is important. And I think about culture as the personality. That's the word I would use to describe. So if you're thinking of a person, it's like the personality of a person, very hard to change.
Yeah.
And then it did a good job of pointing out that climate is quite different, which is more like the mood of the person. And that can change from minute to minute, day to day, week to week, depending on what's going on. And it's really important to think about, when you're improving organizational effectiveness, to think of it in terms of the culture and the climate, what's happening at the moment and what's happening in the broader context of how the organization operates, which is the personality or culture. And then the only other thing I would add to that, in terms of like a summary really, is that this is all about, OD is all about improving organizational effectiveness through implementing the strategy of the business. Yeah. And the strategy cannot be implemented unless you take, really careful regard to the culture, particularly the culture of the organization, because it's how you get things done is through people. And that's what OD is all about.
Now, one of my favorite questions to ask professionals is, what was that spark that led them into the profession? What got their interest early on? And here's a clip of Lisa explaining what it was for her that led her into the world of consulting.
I remember doing one of those career reports that, where you do a diagnostic tool and then you get back a report and it tells you a little bit about your personality. And it said that one of my top skills and things that I like to do is around persuasion. And so a few different careers came up, like being a lawyer, being a teacher, or being a consultant. And that's really quite what got me interested, because of the ability to persuade people and do analytical work and meet lots of people and have that variety. And so law became too difficult because I was living in South Africa and was keen to move around a bit and travel. And you can't really, you need to think about if you want to travel, I guess, with a career, then it needs to be transportable. And management consulting is one of the most transportable professions, really.
Okay, well, I think we have time to squeeze in one more clip here. And this is something Lisa referred to as the challenge in art of consulting. And I just like the way that she referenced it, because it perfectly encapsulates a lot of the elements of this work. Again, some of the difficulties that you could encounter, but then also some of the intrinsic rewards. So anyway, have a listen.
People ask me, what it's like to be a consultant. And sometimes you go into environments and they're actually very hostile. And people don't like consultants because they've had so many consultants in there beforehand, and they've told them to do stuff, and they've professed to know more about the environment than the clients themselves. And I think that really triggers very adverse reactions in people. They feel very, insulted, or, they feel made less of. And, there's a fabulous model by someone called David Rock, which describes the acronym SCARF and how people's status is affected adversely. If you push people into a threat situation, they lose that sense of control. That's the CA, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. They don't feel that it's fair. They don't feel related to the other people anymore, and that's what happens a lot. It's so when you it's almost like you've got a big dirty sign on your back saying management consultant, and nobody likes you. So I think because of that history in organizations, you are very often walking in with an expectation that you're going to do something to people. And that's probably the biggest challenge I find. The work is interesting. The work can be intellectually challenging, but it's still easier than the complexities of people and culture, and being able to shift a whole lot of people at scale in an organization from one behavior to another. And that's the real challenge and art in consulting work, because you can have all the best ideas. You remember that beautiful McKinsey consultant report that, we presented, beautiful ideas, but unless you can see those results being implemented in a tangible way that helps the business, then you haven't done your job properly.
So it is probably about time to wrap up this video, but as always, I do encourage you to go check out the full-length audio version. There's just so much more contained within that in terms of insight, in terms of story. Lisa shares some really good ones as far as the rewarding moments of the challenging moments, in particular case studies, works that she's been part of. Beyond that, she also shares some insights on AI and how that is shifting and changing the world of management consulting. So again, go check out the full-length audio version. You can find that wherever you access your podcast. Just do that search for Life as a ... And last but not least, as always, I would definitely love to get a like or subscribe. All right, well, I think that wraps things up here. So I'll see you next week.